Okay, everyone, this is Simon again. Hopefully by now you've watched rather my main video on this subject, and so now you're expecting to see some information about the Oceania region. So let's talk about the numbers specifically for Oceania. Um, You'll have already have seen that there are a significantly higher number of cases selectees and cases for Oceania. The number is 2815. It's 2,815. That's come from almost double the number of selectees for Australia. Again, the same sort of thing for Fiji. And these numbers, 360 and so on, there's significantly higher numbers for each of these regions. Well, each of these countries, I'm sorry. It's quite late here, so excuse me being a bit punchy. But anyway, you can see that the numbers are significantly higher than we had in previous years. Actually, if I show you that, yeah, I can show you that what that looked like in the previous year, for example. So in August of 2019, we got the 2020 numbers, and you can see Australia was at 647, Fiji 435, New Zealand 180, so the biggest countries in Oceania. And compare those numbers, 647, 435 and 180 to 1,130, 1,087, almost treble there, and a doubling in New Zealand. So you can see what's happened. There's a significantly higher number of selectees this year than there were in previous years. Is that okay? No, it isn't. Let's be honest. It's not okay. It represents some significant risk. Now, if you watched my previous video, the main video on this topic, you'll know that there are a number of things going on that, generally speaking, will have various effects, right? So we've got the immigrant ban that needs to be removed, but if it isn't removed, we'll lose at least the first 3 months of processing. And we also have the travel bans, which probably doesn't affect the Oceania region that badly. The EU ban doesn't affect anything there. The pandemic is generally, as I understand it, pretty well controlled in each of these countries in the Oceania region. So there shouldn't be localized problems there. And the passport rule, I'm not really expecting the passport rule to cause problems for people from these countries, because I think in general, people would have had passports and would have followed the rules, generally speaking, within the Oceania region. So we're going to have 2,800 selectees that are all pretty well qualified, but won't all want to go for their opportunity. So how many cases are there? What's the sort of the holds rate? Let's talk about that. So I generally work in Oceania. I expect a derivative rate of about 1.6. It varies a little bit depending on the makeup of the countries. It could be a little bit a higher number than that, but I've taken the number from historical data in DV2020. So that's the most recent number that I have that's applicable to the Oceania region. That's probably the best way we can look at it. That would suggest that the 2,800 selectees are on 1,759 cases, right? That's my approximation, that's a guess. And I think that as a highest case number, we would see something like 3,500, OC 3,500, around that range. Now, I'd very much like to hear from you if you've got a higher number than that, just so that we know what the numbers are. And we actually won't know the highest numbers probably until we see the SEAC data in January. But when we do see that data, I'm expecting there to be, a number around about 3,500. That means that we have, roughly speaking, a 50% holds rate. In other words, at case number 2000, for example, there's actually only 1,000 cases in front of you, right? So roughly half of the cases in the whole number range in in Oceania, are going to be what I call holes. They're cases that were disqualified as part of the initial selection process, and people who are selected on those numbers don't even know they were selected. They just immediately got knocked out. And so if you have a case number, you're not one of those people, obviously. You actually have a real case, but all of your derivatives are on your case with you, and therefore that's why we've got about, let's say, 1750 cases covering 2,800 people. Okay, now the cases is more important than the case number. The case number is relative. It's how many holes are there determines how high the number goes, right? How many holes and how many actual selectees and cases is how high the number goes. The height of the number, the number itself doesn't matter. What matters is your position within the group and how many cases there are overall, how many selectees there are overall, and how many there are in the quota. So in previous years, we had 2018, which was an over-selected year. We had 2,300 cases. And then in 2019 and 2020, they were both right-sized or under-selected years. And so we had about 900 cases in 2019 and about 865 in 2020. So you can see that we're significantly higher, probably double the number of cases that we should have, essentially. The other aspect that you need to know is the percentage quota. So we know that the global quota is 54,750, and the quotas are actually split up by region, and these are the percentages that are allocated to each region, which gives us the number of visas that can be allocated for each region. And in the case of Oceania, we would expect about 820 visas maximum to be handed out, right? There could be slight variation on this, but you're not going to see a enormous variation. You're not going to see 900 visas handed out or 1,000. It's not going to be like that. You might see 820, 830 at very most, but it's more likely to be around about the 800 mark. And so 2,800 people got selected, 820 are going to get visas, right? If all goes well, if all the processing goes well, if there's no more bans, if there's no impact from more pandemic stuff, 820 will be the number. Okay, so what does that mean? It means that some people will miss out. The higher case numbers are not going to get a chance. We don't know how many of these 1,750 cases will proceed with their opportunity. It's likely that 25 to 35%, let's say, of all the cases probably won't even try and proceed. For whatever reason, they might, the person may have not been serious when they entered the lottery, or they may have fallen in love and decided that they want to stay at home with their loved ones or whatever, and they don't want to go to America. They may be, as anybody should be, worried about what they're seeing in America in terms of the political situation and the racial position in America with the Black Lives Matter movement, etc. So they may be concerned and sort of questioning why they would possibly want to move to America, and that's an understandable reaction. So we know that some percentage of these people, let's say a third, won't go ahead with their application, but that will still leave a couple of thousand people who are effectively fighting for 800 visas, right? And so it's very possible and probable, and I would say almost 100% likely, that there would be a cutoff this year where instead of the region going current and every case number being able to get an interview, we're more likely to see a cutoff number. So the question is where? Where is the risky level? Well, if you do the math, and let's say there are 820 visas available, and you divide that by the derivative rate, right? We could do a little simple sort of math here and say 820 divided by the 1.8 6, I think we have. So that should be something like 512 cases. And I'm going to say, just roughly speaking, to get 512 cases approved, you probably have something like 1,000 cases going in. So, 1,000 cases would be the starting point. And those 1,000 cases, you'd have a significant number of cases not being approved. You'd have some not even processing, not responding. You'd have some no-shows, etc. So let's say, generously, let's say 1,000 cases is the number of cases we need to get to the 500 odd cases here that would yield 820 visas. Okay, so 1,000 cases at our Holes rate, which is roughly half, means that cases around about case number 2,000 and above are at risk, significant risk, I would say. Okay, so the reality is that by case number 2,000, there's probably been 1,000 cases. Out of those 1,000 cases, enough cases will respond to actually fill up the quota. So, does that mean you're out of luck if it's above 2,000? Well, probably. Let's be straight. We're all adults, right? Let's be straight about it and say yes. Okay, it's obvious that if you've got a 3,000 range number, and if you've got a high 2,500 range number, let's say, that's pretty much going to be out of luck this year. And if I were holding a case number of, let's say, something in the 1,500 to 2,500 range, I would feel a bit nervous in that range. If I had a case number of under 1,500 in Oceania, I'd probably be feeling fairly confident that I was going to be, okay. But above the 1,500 range, and certainly above the 2,000 range, it gets less and less confident. And above the 2,500 or the 3,000 range, it gets, pretty bleak, frankly. So hopefully people with high case numbers such as that took my advice and didn't submit their DS260s too early. Because if you did, if you submitted that just thinking that you were going to be okay and you didn't really understand what the case numbers mean, then you have declared immigrant intent. And you may not get a chance to have an interview even under the DV lottery. So that will affect future non-immigrant applications, which is why I ask people to hold back from submitting the DS260 if they've got higher case numbers. That's the main reason. There's one of about 3 or 4 reasons I ask people to do that, but that's the main reason. Is why would you submit your DS260 for no good reason if you don't think you've got a chance of actually getting selected? So that's where we stand with the numbers. It's as simple as that, really. There's not much more to add. For Oceania region, there's not very much complication in terms of the case number distribution. It's pretty much uniform. I can demonstrate that to you, what I mean. If we look at the fantastic data available by my friend Zarthisius, and if we look at the Oceania region, you can see that in Oceania in DV2020, there's pretty much a consistent sort of distribution of visas throughout the whole range. This blue area represents holes. The colours underneath the blue area represents real cases. So in last year, there was something like a 60-40 split, perhaps even lower than that, 60-35 split or something, where there were 60% holes and let's say 40% cases. We've got a similar sort of thing this year, where the distribution is something like 50-50, some perhaps 40-60. So, we do have, quite a number of holes, that's clear. Now, bearing in mind that I'm predicting the highest case number, so I can't be 100% certain of the 40-60 or the 50-50 split, and we won't know that for sure until we get to January when we can get the selectee data. But it's certainly going to be something like this split, which is much different to previous years. If I show you, for example, the DV2018 data for Oceania, you can see there were almost no holes and lots of cases, even though there was a cutoff in DV 2018, which is what we're going to see this year. There was a cutoff at that point, and all these people didn't get a chance to get interviewed. But you can see the distribution of cases and holes, etc., was much different to what we have now, and that's part of the reason why the case numbers are going so high these days, because the number of holes is much higher in this year, DV 2021 and DV 2020, because of a change in strategy that they implemented about a year ago. Okay, so without laboring the point, I know this is going to come as a blow to a lot of people. A lot of people will start to realize that they've been picked as a winner, but actually they're not going to win anything. How confident am I about this? Well, it's going to take some pretty significant surprises happening during this year to change this reality. The reality is 2,800 people selected, 820 visas available. You can't get 820 visas, and make 2,800 people happy. That's just not going to happen. So there will be a cutoff, and the cutoff will mean that high case numbers are going to be the ones that will not get the chance. That's the way it operates. That's the law. That's how it's designed. So there it is. If you have any questions, please do ask them below in the comments below, and certainly pop over to my blog and read the information there. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have, or if you think I've got this totally wrong and messed the whole thing up, do let me know as well. I'll be happy to talk it through with you. All right. Okay. Hope that helps everyone. Good night.